Hey, good morning, everybody. It is about, and make sure everything's good here. It is about 9:22. I can probably try to get this done within a few minutes. I'm hoping. Not a few minutes, but within 20, because I got to get ready for work, of course. And I'm only at work for a couple of hours, so I'll be back probably doing some other vids, later. Um, yeah, there. But I wanted to come on here, and as you see the topic, it is the second wrestling edition of topics on my mind, and I wanted to come on here and discuss a few of those topics, if you will. I wanted to talk about a few of them. I wanted to talk about a few of those things, if you will. Okay, editing here, hold on. But I got 6 topics I want to try to get off my chest within the next 20 something minutes. you know. Um, but what I want to talk about is 6 subjects that I have on tap here. And that is the placement of both Royal Rumble matches. The placement of both Royal Rumble matches. The placement of both Royal Rumble matches this past Sunday. Hold on for a sec. Sorry about that. Had to get my dog a snack here. She was telling me give me a snack or something like that. So, anyway, sorry about that. But anyway, I wanted to come on here and, like I said, I have like 6 topics on my mind. I'm trying to get done within the next 27 minutes because I got to get ready for work. But the first one, like I said, I want to talk about the placement of both Royal Rumble matches this past Sunday because I know some people kind of like in debate, about where they were placed and how they should have been placed. The other one I want to talk about is Ronda Rousey debuting at the end of the Women's Rumble match and what that means for the women overall, from what I've heard, and what her Mania match could be, depending on what direction they go in the next month and next 2 months. So the other one, of course, in case you haven't known, the news broke that apparently Kenny Omega was kicked out of the Bullet Club. I'm going to talk about that. There's footage about that on YouTube and everywhere. People have talked about that. The fourth one I want to talk about again is the women's. Women are going to get a lot of love. The women's roster of WWE is going to get a lot of love because we get the announcement this past Monday of a women's elimination chamber match happening at the Raw pay-per-view Elimination Chamber. And in case you guys don't know, it seems that the way they're doing this is 1 year SmackDown will have like last year SmackDown had the Elimination Chamber. This year Raw has it. So the following year SmackDown will have it back. Fifth is talking about a possible Owens and Zane is a possible Owens versus possible Kevin Owens Sami Zayn match at Mania. And also the thing that I'm going to close out on is the NXT Rumble participants. We had four NXT four members of the NXT roster appearing in both Rumble matches this past Sunday. So I'm going to talk about what that means for them in the future. But speaking of the Rumble matches, let's, of course, start off with the placement of both Rumble matches this past Sunday, because some people have actually talked about this. Some people felt that that despite what occurred, that despite how it was done. Hold on for a second. Sorry, I had to get another snack. It's like, I don't know what's going on. But anyway, again, like I said, one thing that's really kind of been talked about a lot is the placement of the Rumble matches this past Sunday at the Royal Rumble event. And how basically, I think Don Tony said this best. Kind of said him and his co-host for the week, I think Mitch of the Wrestling Soup, kind of said it best that the women's Rumble match did not have to go on did not have to go on last. I mean, yes, they understand the significance of the significance and the historicness of this happening, but it didn't have to happen. And I think a good example they could take away from it, and I don't know if they've talked about it, I have to listen to the full 11-minute clip that Epic Sports has online. But basically, I think one of the examples they could probably take away from it, and we take away from it, is you can have a women's variation of an established men's match, but it doesn't mean it has to go on last. A good example is the women's Money in the Bank match. That went on at the beginning, the middle. I think. Hold on, let me check something. I think it went on around the middle or the beginning of the event. Let me check. No, it actually kicked off the event. It was the Money in the Bank kicked it off. And I think that's the example they're using, is the fact that, you don't have to have an historic match, especially if it's a women's match, with all due respect, no offense, all due respect, but you don't have to have it closing out the show. especially, and I think one thing that OTR Essential and Deluxe Man pointed out was that the only thing that kept people interested in the women's Royal Rumble match, closing out the show and main eventing the show in a sense, was the fact that it was nostalgia. That this this match happening meant a lot for the current roster of women. It meant a lot for them because they're being highlighted, they're being put on the spot, they're being put in the main event of a Big Four pay-per-view, and essentially the Big Four pay-per-view, which is the kickoff to WrestleMania. So that is a big deal. But again, what mainly kept a lot of people interested, and you could see this in Deluxe Man's reaction video to it, and I think he even said it in his review. The only thing that kept him and his two friends, or co-reactors, interested in the match was the nostalgia. It was the nostalgia of seeing, Molly Holly, Michelle McCool, Lita, Tori Wilson, Trish Stratus. It was that nostalgia that kept them intrigued and interested in interested in watching the match throughout. Yes, you can even talk about the NXT female roster members that got called into the match as well, and that's great. And that's great too. That would keep your interest as well. It's like, ooh, I didn't expect this person to be up there. But I think what kind of got people talking a lot was the fact that, again, I think this is a major thing that WWE has to look into next year if they're going to continue this trend, especially if the Royal Rumble is going to be at Chase Field, which ironically which combined together can sit about 60,000 something people when you add seats on the field, on the baseball field itself. Off and everything. When you put all those seats around the outfield, depending on where the placement of the ring's going to be, you put those seats there. You put the seats, where the entrances are going to be and all that, or near the entranceway, whatever that will be. Basically, this is something that they have to really think about going into next year, because I don't think 60,000, like what is it, 68,000, maybe 70,000 people are going to want to watch a Women's Royal Rumble close out the show for the second year in a row. Bigger crowds sometimes can be more acceptable. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that they're not. And you might be able to get away with it in that way. But I think bigger crowds, they might be more acceptable, especially if it's not WrestleMania. But a bigger crowd nowadays, though, when you think about it, especially what we saw in Philly and even in non-hardcore, internet wrestling community-based cities, you will get your hardcore fans. You will get your pure pro wrestling fans in there, and they will basically, tell you like it is. They'll try to take over the show. They'll try to, insert their own judgment into the show. And if they decide to do the Women's Rumble match next year, the best solution is to do it either at the end of the first hour or at the start of the show or at the end of the second hour going into the third. That is how you do it. That is how you would do it, because essentially you wouldn't be upsetting people, because the main reason they would be there is either whatever match is the headliner that's going to attract them there and they're going to want to see, or the fact that they're only there because they want to see the main Rumble, the men's Rumble, close out the show and not the women's. Again, hear me out. I have nothing against the women closing out. I mean, I understand that WWE, and maybe at the behest of Stephanie McMahon, felt that the women need to close out because this is historic. This is something that people have been wanting to happen, never thought it would happen, and yet here we are. So I can understand them wanting to close it out. So I get that. I'm totally fine with that. But as far as the placements go, I mean, I think again, what really irks people is the way the men's rumble felt like it was just thrown to the side. I mean, it was basically the third match of the night. You were closing out the first hour, going into the second hour with this thing. And I think that's really what really kind of irked a lot of people was, wait a minute, you're taking the main attraction, the real main attraction of your namesake pay-per-view, your namesake the first of the name. You're basically taking the main attraction of your namesake pay-per-view, the pay-per-view, your first pay-per-view of the year, the first of your big four, the one that kicks off the road to WrestleMania. You're taking that main traditional namesake match and you're placing it third on the card because you want to close out with the women's match. And I think that's what irks people. I mean, yeah, a lot of people can understand the significance. Like I said earlier, a lot of people can understand the significances and the historicness of the women's Rumble match, happening, and that being the reason it was closed out, and maybe because Stephanie McMahon said, "Hey, let's do this." And I can understand how people feel irked about that. I mean, even Don Tony, I think, mentioned that Stephanie McMahon needs to realize that you can't just close out a show with something like the women's Rumble match because you want to see it close out the show, and because you, not the fans, want to see it close out and main event the show, when you should be doing it the way fans would want to see it or fans expect it to be done. So yeah, I think that's the one thing that really irked a lot of fans was the fact that the women's Rumble match was placed in a significant spot that it shouldn't have been placed in a very significant spot that, again, with all due respect and no offense, with all due respect, I understand and I actually respect the fact that they got to close out the show. I really am respectable about that fact. But again, I think that's what really irks the fan base is you closed out the first of your main four pay-per-views, the one that kicks off the road to Mania. You essentially closed it out with a historical match, which is good, but with a match that not a lot of people were, too sure that even if you were able to pull it off, how would you pull it off? And I can understand some people's frustrations with that. But you know what? Come next year, if they continue to do 2 Rumbles, we'll see what happens. If they don't, then hey, they tried, and I'll admit it was a success. I thought it was a success. I will admit it was a success. I will admit I thought it was all right. I thought it did its job, and I thought it was good. I thought it was a success. So I feel that they're probably going to bring it back next year. They may either lower the count of women involved in the Rumble, or they're either going to decide, okay, if we're going to do 30 women again, let's kick it off. Let's kick off the pay-per-view with the show, or let's place it at the end of the first hour into the second hour, like we did with the men the previous year, which would have been this year. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, the placement of the Rumble matches on the show, I don't really think sit well with fans, even though some can understand the historic significance as to why they did it. All right. Speaking of the Rumble match itself, one thing that did stand out afterwards was Ronda Rousey debuting. Now, a lot of people thought Ronda was going to debut in the match itself, but she didn't. That did not happen. Instead, she debuted after Asuka had run the match. And just as Asuka's about to choose between Alexa or Charlotte who she's going to face, that's when Ronda's music, or her new music, plays. She comes out, gets in the ring, points to the WrestleMania sign, tries to shake Asuka's hand. Asuka says, "Screw you, I ain't shaking it." Because I think there was maybe some legitimate heat there, perhaps. Legitimate anger at the fact that, wait a minute, we just did this historic thing and now you're stealing our thunder. And then she gets out of the ring, walks around, high fives fans, shakes Stephanie's hands tensionally. So, yeah, Ronda is now in the WWE, and apparently she's a full-time performer. I guess according to an interview she did, this is going to be her priority now. This is going to be her first priority now that she's in the world of WWE. And there are some people that are not too fond of that. Some people have said her career is pretty much shot now or pretty much dead now because she's with the WWE. Stephen A. Smith is not a fan of this particularly, saying her career is pretty much done. And I can understand how people feel about Ronda being there, but for WWE, even for the big conglomerate that they are, this is a big deal. This is somebody that you wouldn't think would even want to step foot in a WWE ring, even though she's a wrestling fan, but yet here she is. So yeah, Ronda is here. And apparently what this means for the women is they're going to get, according to sources, a major push. Now, what that means in the long run, we don't know. I highly doubt it's going to mean they're going to headline and close out Mania. I highly doubt that. Unless it's Ronda against Charlotte for the SmackDown Women's title. That's the only way you're going to do that. But I highly doubt that's going to happen. It does probably mean that the Women's Elimination Chamber match, which is going to be for the Women's Championship, is going to close out the Chamber pay-per-view. So that's probably the only other thing I can think of. And perhaps there will be some significant women matches, historical ones or story-based rivalry ones that will close out several Raw brand or SmackDown branded pay-per-views in the long run. That's the only thing I can think of. And you might get once in a while, just like with the Rumble, you might once in a while get them closing out a Big Four pay-per-view. As far as what her Mania match could be, that's kind of up in the air because not a lot of people know exactly what she's going to be doing for WrestleMania. But there is rumors going around that they could be going in two different directions. One, they could end up going with Ronda against Charlotte, and that would all depend on if Asuka chooses Alexa Bliss or whoever the Raw Women's Champion is after the Elimination Chamber. So that would be good, and that might be the closest that the women would have, with all due respect, of closing out WrestleMania, headlining, main eventing it. But then again, there's the other rumor that she's going to be involved in a tag team match at Mania with whoever as a partner against Triple H and Stephanie. How that starts out, we don't really know. We don't know if Stephanie's going to get involved in the Chamber match and try to get herself a shot at the title, and that's how it starts out. We don't really know exactly what they're going to do. So it's totally up in the air, honestly, exactly what Ronda's Mania match may be. Again, it depends on where they go with Asuka. If Asuka chooses the Raw Women's Championship, then that means Ronda's going to go for the SmackDown Women's Championship, and that means Charlotte's going to have that title going into Mania. If they go with the direction of Asuka choosing Charlotte, and they go with Nia versus Alexa, then we know we're going to get Ronda against Stephanie in a tag match of some kind, and maybe even a singles match. We don't really know. But yeah, apparently Ronda being there is going to help give the women's division, the roster, a major push that's been needed for a long time. And her Mania match right now is either down to, what the WWE does with Asuka. Do they send Asuka to Alexa and does she put Ronda against Charlotte? Or do they put Asuka against Charlotte and put Ronda in a tag match or a singles match against Stephanie? We don't really know. It's totally up in the air, really, what they do. So we'll just have to wait and see. Apparently, from what I understand, I don't know if it's the work shoots or legitimate shoots, but it sounds like some of the women on the women's roster weren't too happy with Ronda, upstaging them in the historic significance of the Rumble match the way she did. So I don't know if it's a work shoot in those tweets that they put out or not. I'm assuming they are. I'm assuming that what they said in the tweets are kind of worked as a hybrid of legitimate shoot and work shoot. It's kind of like a hybrid of both in those tweets that they put out. So we'll just have to wait and see what they do with Ronda come Mania. We'll probably get a more clearer answer when Elimination Chamber happens. So we'll just have to wait till then. But yeah, Ronda is now in WWE, and we'll just see what they do with her. All right. next thing I want to talk about, I'm trying to wrap this up as quickly as I can. Next thing I want to talk about is something that happened this past week in Sapporo, Japan. Japan. Um, it was at I think it was at night 2 of New Beginnings in Sapporo. Is New Japan holding the New Beginnings event in Sapporo, 2-night event in Sapporo. And at the end of the main event of the second night of New Beginnings, the Switchblade, Jay White, beat Kenny Omega to become the IWGP United States champion. And what happened after that was apparently Hangman Page came out to confront Jay. So I guess the positioning Hangman to be the one that challenges Jay for the U.S. title in the future. This caused the Young Bucks and Marty Scurll to come down and kind of come down because Kenny took the U.S. title from Hangman and just basically handed over to Jay, saying he's earned it. This is his moment. And then that caused Cody to come down, Cody Rhodes. And there was a big conflict there. Cody saying, "You can't do this. This is my best friend. You can't do this to him. This is his moment." Da 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 da. A little bit of more of the Bullet Club infighting, to the point that Omega accidentally shoved down, I think, what was it, Matt Jackson. So basically, what happened is there was more infighting going on, and okay, so first after that incident right there with Bucks, you have the Bucks leaving, saying, "Hey, we're not doing this right now. We're out of here." You have Hangman leave, and then you have Marty Scurll say, "Hey, you guys take care of it between each other," and that's to Omega and Rhodes. So, long story short, just when it looks like everything's cool between Omega and Rhodes, and they're about to leave the ring, and Rhodes is opening the ropes for Omega. That's when Rhodes grabs Omega. Just as Omega is going through the ropes, Cody grabs him from behind and hits him with a lot of people say this very sickening crossroads. And I guess that was the implosion that was needed in the Bullet Club, because that was destined to happen in the Bullet Club, because you even have Don Callis, who I think is a member of the Bullet Club in some way, not happy about what's going on, upset that Kevin Kelly gave Cody his chair to try to hit Omega with or something, that Hangman Page came back down and it kind of was starting to help out Cody as well. So you had all this going down, and then out of nowhere, out comes Ibushi, just as Page is holding Omega, and Cody's about to whack him in the face with a chair. Out comes Ibushi, Kota Ibushi, and he ends up saving Omega. And after that, they both kind of hug. They kind of build up to the moment, kind of dramatically a little bit. But in the end, both Omega and Ibushi embrace. I guess their tag team of the Golden Lovers is back or something, back together now in New Japan. But now the question is, where do they go from here? And what's the status of Bullet Club in Japan? I don't know. A lot of people are assuming Cody's going to pick up the scraps and he's going to basically be the new leader of the Bullet Club, and he and Page and Scurll and the Bucks and anybody else that's part of the group, from Bad Luck Fale to the Girls of Destiny, are all going to follow suit under Cody. Some are assuming it's going to be like NWO Black and White versus NWO Wolfpack in WCW, where you're going to have one group associated with Omega and another group associated with Cody. We don't really know if that's what they're going to do. And some are assuming that this is also the beginning of the end of Omega's run in New Japan, because Omega did sign on to at least, I think, next year. And a lot of people are assuming that this is the start of his year-long final run in New Japan. Basically, like, this is his year-long run final tour or final run with New Japan before he signs and jumps ship with WWE, a la AJ Styles, a la kind of like AJ Styles did 2 years ago. Because remember, AJ had competed in Wrestle Kingdom 12 several weeks prior. Had a farewell match or tour, or whatever it was, in Ring of Honor as well, and then showed up at the Rumble at the end of the month. So showed up and debuted with WWE at the Rumble, or in the Rumble match, the following month. So a lot of people are assuming, we're not too totally sure yet, but they're assuming that seems like that's the direction Omega is heading for. Is that is the direction that this whole situation with Kenny Omega is heading towards? That this is just the beginning of his farewell run with New Japan Pro Wrestling. The only thing that I think is going to complete it, even if it's for a short run, if this is going to be Kenny Omega's last year with the New Japan, I think a lot of people would be in agreement that the one thing that's going to complete it is if he gets a run with the IWGP Championship, even if it's for a short time. So I think that's the only way it's going to run. That's the only way it's going to make this farewell run come full circle for Kenny Omega. So we'll just have to wait and see what they do. And yeah, I don't know exactly what else I can say about the situation, but we'll see what they do and go from there. If they go with like a Wolfpack black and white thing of NWO back in the day in New Japan, then that'll be interesting. So that'll be intriguing and interesting, but we'll just have to wait and see what they do. So anyway, next up, and I'm trying to speed through this as best I can. Next up, the announcement this past Monday of the Women's Elimination Chamber match. Now, not a lot of people. Now we don't know exactly who the participants besides Alexa Bliss are going to be, but I do know, as I mentioned at the beginning, that there is that like I mentioned when I talked about Ronda Rousey, there was no doubt this is probably going to close out the Elimination Chamber, seeing as though this is the only one that is for a championship. The other one is going to be a number one contenders match to see who faces Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. So yeah, basically this is going to be possibly the main event, the headline match, the one that closes out the show. So right now, the only confirmed participant is Alexa Bliss. We don't know who the others are. They're probably going to do qualifying matches starting next week. But my assumption is going to be this. After what we saw with Sasha Banks, after what people saw with Sasha Banks in that classic encounter at Elimination Chamber, you're going to get Sasha in there. You're probably going to get Bayley. There's no doubt they're going to put Sasha and Bayley in there. You're going to get possibly Mickie James as well. People are assuming you're going to get Nikki Bella. I'm not really sure, but you may get Nikki Bella. So you got, because John's going to be in the men, so it only makes sense, I guess, that Nikki would be in there. But you would have Sasha, Bayley, Mickie James, Nikki Bella. Nia Jax, of course, would have to be the fifth one. I mean, so wait a minute, you would have Sasha Banks, Bayley, Mickie James, Nikki Bella, and Nia Jax. So those right there would be your participants for the Raw Women's event. Now, you might say, well, what if they put somebody from Absolution in there? They could do that too. They could shake things up and put someone from Absolution, like Mandy Rose or Sarah Logan. I'm not saying they wouldn't. Because here's why I look at it. There's no doubt you're going to have Sasha in there. You're going to have Mickie James in there. You probably going to have Bayley. And that's three. And so if you don't have Nikki Bella participating, which I think a lot of people would assume would be dumb if you have John Cena in the men's, you got to have Nikki in the other, especially with her political pool, as some people point out. Then I would expect maybe Mandy Rose, or I would expect Sarah Logan would get the final spot. So, because let's be honest, if the injury that happened to Paige wouldn't have happened, then Paige probably would have had that final spot. So I think to compensate for that, they're going to either give it to Sarah Logan or Mandy Rose. Or not Sarah Logan, but Sonya Deville. Sorry, they're going to give it either to Sonya Deville or Mandy Rose, and I'm thinking it'll be Sonya. that gets that spot if Nikki Bella doesn't. Well, she'll probably get one of them anyway if they don't put Mickey or Bailey in there. So, expect one member of Absolution in there in some form of capacity. But yeah, that's what's going to be happening. And this basically is where I think WWE is going to be deciding, okay, what direction do they go in as far as Mania, Ronda Rousey, Charlotte, Asuka, and Alexa, as far as Asuka goes and Ronda goes, because it's either, this will be the determining factor. Because if Alexa wins and Asuka goes with her, then you're getting Ronda and Charlotte. If Asuka says, I'm going after Charlotte, then you get Nia and Alexa. You might even get 3 women's matches at WrestleMania, because a lot of people are assuming this would be the match where you finally get that heel turn, that full-fledged heel turn from Sasha Banks on Bayley. And then that's where you would get Bayley and Sasha. Even if it's not for a championship, you would get them at WrestleMania one-on-one. So we'll have to wait and see what they do. But yeah, projectly, you're going to have Alexa, you're going to have Sasha, you're going to have Mickie James, you're going to have Bayley in there, and you're either going to have Sonya Deville or Nikki Bella along with Nia Jax. That's pretty much confirmed. Alexa, Sasha, Bayley, Mickie. That's 4 right there. Nia. Let's see. Alexa, Sasha, Bayley, Mickie, Nia, and either Sonya Deville or Nikki Bella. It's going to be one of those 2. So we'll just have to wait and see what they do, and let's hope for the best on that. And again, don't be surprised if it does close out the show, because if they're getting a significant push, there's your answer. All right, next up, again, trying to close this out as fast as I can because I got to get ready for work. Sorry about that. It's just some people, this portfolio people keep calling up. I don't know why. But next up, let's talk about potentially what could happen. And I know the Slag Daddy doesn't want to see this happen, but there is speculation as of last night now that you could end up getting Owens and Zane at WrestleMania. I'm not totally sure about that just yet. I mean, just because you had a little bit of dissension, it doesn't mean necessarily you're gonna get that match. It doesn't mean necessarily that we will get that match at Mania. What I would assume is going to happen is because there is rumors going around that Shane is supposed to face them in a tag match or some kind at Mania. So we're not totally sure just yet 100% if we're going to get Owens and Zane. And the way it looks like right now is they're probably going to switch roles if they do that, with Owens as the face and Zane as the heel. And that would be a little awkward for fans, but that would be an interesting change of pace. But again, we don't know if that's what they're doing. Either whether or not Owens is the face or the heel, or Zane is the face of the heel, we don't know if that's what they're doing. All we know right now is that's a possibility that people are talking about right now because of what happened last night. Some people would say, oh, the reason that Zane kind of walked off is because he had to get himself, ready, or at least not get too exerted or too exhausted, or exert himself too much because of his mixed match challenge tag match that he had following SmackDown. So it's like, okay, we get that. It's like, okay, we can understand that. So maybe that was the reason for the angle. But with Daniel Bryan pitting Zane against Owens against each other next week, with the winner facing AJ at Fastlane, and what Zane's how Zane's promo was at the end of the night, it's going to be hard to kind of determine what role they're going to put Zane in, either as a heel or a face. But again, just because of what happened last night and what's going to happen next week on SmackDown does not mean just yet that you're going to get Zane and Owens at Mania, unless they do the Jericho thing that they did last year when it came to one of them being in a title match at Fastlane. So we'll have to wait and see. But right now that's kind of up in the air. And I know that Sleg Daddy at the OTR Central would not want to see another one of those matches. All right, last thing I want to talk about is the NXT participants being called up, taking place in both Rumble matches. You had Andreas Giannamis, the NXT champion, and Adam Cole from the Undisputed Era, both participating in the match for the men. And then on the women's side, you had Kairi Sane and Ember Moon. My thought on that is, honestly, like I said in my live actions, this is basically just evidence that these four that got to participate in the Rumble matches are going to be the ones that get called up after Mania, after WrestleMania. In other words, you're going to have another few months with them in NXT, maybe a little after that as well. But I'm assuming after WrestleMania, you're going to start seeing them get called up. Like you're going to probably see if Ember drops the women's championship to Shayna Baszler, whoever, you're going to see Ember get called up to the women's roster. And she's probably going to end up on whatever brand or whatever show Asuka's on, because the way they teased it in the Rumble match, and they've been teasing it even as far as NXT, is she's going to be the one that beats Asuka. She's the one that's going to end the undefeated streak. And I think the reason they teased that again in the Rumble is the saving that moment for the main roster. They want that moment to be on a bigger stage than what NXT has to offer. So that's why they teased it at the Rumble, why they let her hit Asuka with the Eclipse at the Rumble. They're teasing it. They're teasing that moment, and they're going to make that moment become a reality once Ember comes to the main roster and is on the same show as Asuka. Kairi Sane showing up even after she was banged up for a while definitely shows you that WWE has a lot invested in her as well. So she's going to probably end up getting called up maybe after Mania. I would assume she's more SmackDown bound than Raw. So expect her maybe to end up on the blue brand after Mania. Adam Cole, I'm assuming he's also SmackDown bound as well. I just get this aura from him that he's SmackDown bound. Whether or not he comes up on his own or he gets caught up in a package with Fish and O'Reilly, it's going to be depending on what happens. But expect him along with him alone or both, or with Fish and O'Reilly to be on the SmackDown brand either after Mania or between Mania and SummerSlam. Then Andreas Giannamis, I expect him to possibly be a Raw guy, so that means he'd be 205 bound. I look at Andreas Giannamis as being a guy that is either going to be SmackDown bound, where he could definitely get a lot of exposure, a lot of opportunity, but also a guy that I see being Raw and 205 bound. So that's what I see with him. So that's what I see, and I see him possibly coming up after Mania or between Mania and SummerSlam, same as Adam Cole. So that's what I think is going to happen. Adam Cole, this is my opinion. I could be wrong, but before I close this out, I believe that Adam Cole and Andreas Giannamis are going to show up after Mania. They're going to show up between WrestleMania and SummerSlam, basically after Mania and between or after SummerSlam. So they're going to be showing up around that time. Adam Cole, and along with Fish and O'Reilly, if they come up as a package, is going to the blue brand. Well, I think the red brand, which is Raw, is going to get Andreas Giannamis so they can fit him in probably with 205 Live. Kairi Sane, she'll get the same. She'll be probably showing up after Mania. I see her showing up on the blue brand with SmackDown. And Ember Moon is going to end up on whatever brand Asuka's on. And like I said, they've been teasing that she's the one that's going to end the undefeated streak. She's going to be either one that does do it. But the reason they didn't pull the trigger in NXT and the reason they teased it in the Rumble match is they're saving it for that bigger stage, which is the main roster, which could either be SummerSlam, could be Survivor Series, could be even Mania itself next year. So expect that to happen, and expect, like I said, her to show up on whatever brand Asuka's on. So, but really, that's all I'm going to say for this second wrestling edition of Topics on My Mind for today, the last day of January 31st. Let me know what you guys think down below. Comment if you like. I'd like to hear from you. I got to get ready to go into. I got to get myself cleaned up here and ready for work because my bus will be showing up soon. And I'll talk to y'all later. God bless. Take care.